Thank you so much, Eva. And thanks, Alex and Fabian, for joining today. We'll have a good session here planned for you. Fabian, I hope you're doing okay. I know you weren't super fit yesterday, but thanks for still pushing through today. That is sheer commitment here. I'm super excited to have you both on the call simply because we've just, all had this long journey together in various ways and in various forms. And I think that journey in the last, for me, 10 years and for you in different lengths has been quite exciting to see how companies are engaging in the social entrepreneurship sector, how companies are committing to inclusion, to social issues, to environmental issues, both because of intrinsic motivations of the people inside of the companies, also because of course, external pressures and a changing environment externally. And that's why I'm really, really looking forward to the conversation here. Eva, just one last question maybe to you as a host. The best way that we have a conversation, we obviously have a few bullet points planned, but is that also attendees send us some questions so we actually answer directly to what they want to hear. So I'm assuming everyone can just post them in the Q&A section, right?
Exactly. And then depending on your time, you can come back. It's more informal. We have quite a nice group of people, and then there are questions appearing. I'm sure they will come.
Then let's do that. The more you ask us, the more relevant it's going to be to you. It's not just one-way street communication. So looking forward to that. But let me actually start with a bit of an overview of how we've been able to work with both Alex and Fabian in the past, and I'll ask them to introduce what they're doing in their daily lives, because I think that's super relevant to everyone on the call. I'd be super happy to see more corporate engagements also in CEE in the region that this project is going to address. I think it's going to be super relevant for the challenges that we're seeing in the next couple of years. We've always at YSB had this mission and these values that we think business is a great solver of problems, because as a way to solve problems sustainably in a financially sustainable way, but also because it's such a sheer force in the world that if business is not contributing to the society and the planet, then we can do only so much with an NGO sector. It has to also be owned by the business sector. And in a positive way where we go beyond doing no harm into actually creating positive impact. And that journey has been exciting, up and downs for the last couple of years, but I think we've all seen in the last 2-3 years so much more movement on this. And we've actually started our very first journey with our very first engagement in Haiti with the help of SAP. It was in 2010 after the earthquake happening that actually, back then, the SAP CEO met Professor Yunus at a meeting in Davos, who's our co-founder. And at the time, corporate philanthropy was still the main focus of work for corporations to make a difference. And I think it still is, but in a very different way. And we'll hear a bit about that from Alex, I think. But that back in the day, the idea was, well, why can't we give $1 million to Haiti to actually rebuild the country in a donation? And that's actually where Professor Yunus jumped in and said, well, this country has been so swamped with donations. The real difference you can make is actually by rebuilding the country with a sustainable approach, with a social business approach that can help to lift people out of poverty for the long term and not just immediate crisis relief. And that's really how we started our journey, with a fund in Haiti, investing into social businesses, and from there expanding to more than 12 countries at the moment, investing into early and later stage businesses. And on that road, we've always been engaging with companies as well, starting with the Grameen Danone joint venture in Bangladesh that was set up by Professor Yunus and Grameen, but also many others that looked at what can I do as a company to actually use my resources, use my skills, the skills of my employees to solve a social or environmental problem, and do that in a financially sustainable way. And by the way, then also reap some benefits for myself as an organization. And that kind of work was also what inspired then CEO of MAN Truck and Bus, Joachim Dries, to actually say, well, how can we contribute? We're a bus and truck manufacturer, but I'm really engaged and really excited about this topic. And I want to help social entrepreneurs with the expertise that we have as a transport logistics company. And that's where we got the chance to set up the MAN Impact Accelerator, to use the skills, the expertise of MAN employees and really work with the social entrepreneurs. I think it wasn't clear at the beginning to actually any of us, and Fabian and I still remember the time when we started this journey, but it wasn't really clear to us at the beginning how much excitement it would actually trigger on both sides. We've seen tremendous conversations happening within the staff of MAN about how they can actually help the social entrepreneurs. Friendships have been formed, weddings have been attended after that, and most importantly, impact has been made. And I think those journeys and this excitement is a really positive way of looking at the impact of corporations, who obviously are under fire quite a bit these days for the negative impacts they're having. But I think setting that sentiment that we're having a really inspiring, creative way of turning this narrative around, that's what we want to talk about today. And I know that many of these elements are also part of Alex's work, social volunteering, but also a new and emerging approach to corporate impact, really working with social entrepreneurs as suppliers in social procurement, or as service providers, or in the distribution chain. And I think that's something that is super inspiring to see, that SAP has even committed a huge part of their addressable spend to actually working with social entrepreneurs and inclusive businesses in the future. And Alex, maybe we can start with hearing from you a little bit about your work. I know there is many things that you can highlight. I think social procurement and especially volunteering and how to engage in social entrepreneurship is most helpful also to the audience here.
Sure, I'm happy to do that. Thank you so much, Daniel. And because you were referencing Haiti, you probably have seen the picture in the background. It is actually a picture from Haiti. And I bought it on one of the trips that we did to Port-au-Prince that Professor Yunus joined. So has very high sentimental value.
That's impact made on your living room, at least.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, it's been, what a journey it's been the last 10 years, right, since we started engaging with you on Haiti. And look, one of the things that I'm very honest about is, just because we embarked on that joint project at the time in 2010 doesn't mean that actually people at SAP understood what the real potential was for the corporate sector to engage with the social enterprise sector. I think it was sort of a high level commitment that was made at the time. It made sense. But I think to truly deeply understand how the value that the social enterprise sector brings from an impact perspective, but also the value that the social enterprise sector can bring to the corporate sector wasn't truly understood. And we've gone through significant ups and downs in the last 10 years when it comes to that whole topic. At least from our perspective, from a CSR perspective, I think we started to understand it. And we started to engage quite deeply in the sector, but frankly, at times, often without not that much business support. Our journey has been basically starting with bilateral partnerships, like what we have with you in Haiti, to something similar that you were working on together with MAN in terms of capacity building for social enterprises, which we have done as well we call it our social sabbatical, where we send teams of SAP employees to social enterprises and nonprofit organizations in emerging markets to work on strategic challenges. But what you were referencing to, our journey has gone all the way to figuring out how do we actually not just help accelerate the social enterprise sector through providing our expertise and experience, but how can we scale and accelerate the sector by providing access to new markets? And this is something that social procurement basically can do. And what we realized a few years ago is we're a B2B company, right? So we help other companies run at their best. Increasingly, our customers were coming to us to tell us, look, we have pressures when it comes to sustainability. We need to do X, Y, Z when it comes to environmental sustainability. But increasingly, we're also being asked to create positive and tangible and sustainable social impact. How can you, as SAP, help us achieve those goals? So obviously, a lot is happening on the environmental side with climate action and with circular economy. But another opportunity that we saw is in terms of responsible supply chains and diversifying supply chains. Through research, we have found out that, for example, over 50% of procurement leaders in the private sector are charged with diversifying their procurement spend. Over 50%, that's massive. So if you look at that, and then if you sort of see what the social enterprise sector is doing, you see there's a massive supply, right? There's so many products and services that the social enterprise sector is generating that could be relevant as well for the corporate sector. And social procurement does exactly that. It basically matches the procurement need of a corporate with the supply that is there, hopefully there on the social enterprise or diverse supplier side. All of this research led us to make a very firm commitment last year on our end, which is called 5+5 by 25. And it basically means that we want to divert 5% of our addressable procurement spend towards social enterprises and 5% towards diverse suppliers by the end of 2025. Just so that you get a feel for what this means in terms of numbers, this means a 60 million procurement spend on SAP side. And this is, and I'm not going to say any secrets, this is 3 times higher than what our corporate giving budget is annually, right? So just that alone shows you, if you're able to divert procurement spend, so spend that you as a company are doing anyway, right? You've already made that commitment to spend that money. You need the goods and the services. If you spend it towards social enterprises, you can unlock a significant higher amount of investment for social good than you could by corporate giving alone. I'll stop there. There's lots of details around that, obviously, but yeah, I'll stay there with my comments on social procurement.
I'll definitely ask you a few more questions about this. Maybe one thing just for the audience to make this more concrete. Do you have one example of your work with social entrepreneurs as a supplier?
Yeah, I'll give you 2. One because it's my favorite, but the other one because it's so tangible. So office supply, we're a B2B company, right? So in terms of what we actually need in terms of products, it's very often sort of what happens in an office environment, which is obviously a little bit difficult with COVID-19, but still office supplies are still needed, right? So we actually have a relationship, a partnership with a social enterprise in the UK called Wild Hearts. And they supply us with all of our office supply in the UK right now. So all of our pens, all of our paper, staplers, anything that we really need in an office environment comes from Wild Hearts. And they have committed over 50% of their profits to create social impact for underserved communities in Africa. So that's sort of one way. The other one that I really like is a small social enterprise in Argentina called Tribu Miraki. They're actually a marketing, they provide marketing services. And they're a social enterprise because they employ underserved young people. They train them up in marketing skills, particularly also graphic design and things like that. And their services are offered to the corporate sector. What I like about this one is because we've been with them for years now. We supported them in their incubation. So we had a social sabbatical team with them that supported them in their startup phase. Then we started, procuring from them very small things here and there locally in Argentina. All the way to today, where they're now a global vendor to SAP for marketing services. And this is a relationship that we've had now for about 5 years.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing. Great. We'll get a few more examples later on as well, I'm sure, but this gives you a bit of a feeling of what is meant by social procurement, and obviously also support to social entrepreneurs. And talking about support to social entrepreneurs, obviously 2017 was the year when we were able to start the MAN Impact Accelerator together, Fabian, and that was triggered back then by Joachim. But we'd also love to understand your view on how everything started, and obviously why also MAN did start this program in the beginning.
Yeah, I'm happy to share. As you maybe hear, my voice isn't that clear yet, but I try my best, so bear with me.
It's very rock star style.
So we're a commercial vehicle OEM, so we produce and sell trucks, buses, and vans pretty much globally. We're the second largest brand in Europe, basically. And I'm with MAN now for 10 years. And Eva just mentioned my last role as head of digital transformation. And that was basically the role where I had to kind of build up a digital portfolio kind of surrounding our vehicles to make them future ready, basically. But it was also things like over-the-air business we created, so making sure that the trucks are staying updated all the time and safe and ready to go. But I also was very much involved in now so-called North Star, where we created an idea of how our future business model might look like, looking at emerging trends like digitalization, electrification, and autonomous driving, which are major forces looking at our business model today and might actually turn them upside down. So I was very much future driven and transformation prone, my work. And in this context, I basically got a hobby from our CEO, and that was then the MAN Impact Accelerator. And I honestly didn't have anything yet to do with the area, but I was very much enthusiastic about the job and the opportunity also to work with Daniel and Yunus as a group. The idea was basically from our CEO that by doing something good with social ventures, mostly in the transportation and logistics sphere, we could also benefit ourselves by kind of challenging the ideas that we have in-house, and also maybe get new ones and maybe more relevant ones even. And the accelerator basically is a mentor-based program that brings social entrepreneurs from around the globe together, and in a way to kind of tackle social and environmental challenges. And we limited the scope to the transportation and logistics space because we wanted to have a connection to our actual business. And I'll come to it later, I guess, but it's also a success factor, I would say. How did we? So the ultimate goal was basically to support startups in their risky pathway to a sustainable business model by having a very clear curriculum. We knew quite well what are the tricky steps that startups on their way to becoming a sustainable business model have to take. Things like having a well-defined purpose, knowing what you're aiming for, basically, and why you as a founder actually are involved in this. Or things like how can you actually achieve growth, or the very big topic of impact. And also, how can you actually sell and pitch these ideas to investors and others? So, but we also, which was a crucial part, we also wanted to bring in knowledgeable mentors, obviously from MAN, but also from other relevant players in the area. And that was something for me quite astonishing, because we didn't pay any money to anyone, but we brought in mentors from the likes of Google, Uber, Facebook, Maersk, VW, and others who spent their time with the startups in the goal or towards the target of actually creating a difference and helping them creating a sustainable business model. So that's basically the program in a nutshell. Me personally, I just switched to another role. I'm much more now with Alexandra. I switched now to sustainability and decarbonization for MIM. I'm leading these two topics, and obviously what you just shared, Alexandra, is also now very much more part of my business. And we're looking into how can we source sustainably? How can we include, for example, CO2 criteria in our sourcing or award process? And these are big topics for us. Obviously, I'm also going to take the social impact topics with me in the new role, and looking very much forward to it.
Awesome. Thanks, Fabian. Super relevant. I think we have a few questions already trickling in, and which we'll get to in a second. You already started to have a conversation about strategic alignment and alignment with what you can do best. Alignment with your sector. And just wanted to ask a bit of a question, especially as we have a few folks here on the line that are thinking about engaging in the social entrepreneurship sector from a corporate perspective, or vice versa, from a social entrepreneurship sector to engage with corporates. How relevant can or should such a collaboration be, and how much of or what are the pros and cons, to be honest? I think I know that Fabian, we had a few conversations. How closely should it be versus how much moonshotty, or how much of a North Star should it be? And I think, Alex, you also made a point about starting maybe with addressable spend, not just for SAP, but also the customers you're working with. So just wondering, how much strategic alignment is necessary, how much is really good, and where would it actually be, maybe have some contrary effects? I'll let Alex go first.
You mean strategic alignment to the business, right?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Look, I think that I think it's very relevant because I shared earlier that we had our ups and downs, right? And that that for a very long time our engagement with the social enterprise sector was primarily something that we were driving out of CSR, and of course we tried to be as integrated into the business strategy as possible. But unless you're able to bring the business into, not just into the conversation, but have a seat at the table, and they see the direct value that they can gain from it too, your investment or your engagement is going to be sort of a bit on the periphery, right? It's sort of, it will have this nice to have kind of touch rather than a need to have. And my view of partnership and engagement between the corporate sector and the social enterprise sector is that actually we need each other. And that and because I see that as such a strategic, that kind of partnership between the corporate sector and the social enterprise sector is so valuable and strategic, you need to sort of be able to find that link to the business. It's not always easy to do, and hence that entry point of procurement can be an interesting one, right? Because it's while you're still trying to figure out, and I'll be honest as well, we're sometimes still trying to figure out from a very big picture perspective what complete alignment of the social enterprise sector and our business truly means, right? And I think we've made great progress there, but we're not completely there yet. But the whole procurement piece, the social procurement piece, gives you that interesting entry point where you're generating value to the business almost immediately, and yet you can start exploring and understanding the value that the social enterprise sector brings, not just to you as a business, but to society and to the world in general. I'll put a but in there. I think you can get started pretty easily on the whole topic of social procurement. You actually don't need to make it overcomplicated. But I think one thing that you have to sort of be aware of entering this is you need to have a long-term view of it. You can't sort of just take a cost view on it and go like, okay, we'll just do this year and we'll figure this out. And the reason why I'm saying that is, in my opinion, if you're going to establish social procurement, you at the same time also need to make some kind of commitment to building the network, building the infrastructure, and building capacity for the sector. One cannot go without the other. That's what we're doing. We have a whole strategy around this. Things go really hand in hand. And frankly, I believe that currently our investment in infrastructure and capacity building is still higher than it is just on the social procurement side. And I think it will stay that way for quite a bit. But I do think that it's necessary, right, that you do both.
Yeah, thanks. Fabian, anything to add on that?
I mean, obviously, I can share Alexandra's thoughts. We also obviously had our ups and downs. And for me, the critical thing is that the social impact activity needs to stay connected to the actual business. And we try to make this work by being very close to this future business model discussions that we had. And we developed, as I've said, we've developed some sort of a future business model for an OEM like ours when electrification, digitalization, and autonomous driving will take off. It quite changes the picture quite a bit. And we try to make connected to that and also communicate around that and to understand how the transport and logistics space actually develops into that direction, and constantly also challenging the way we think about this and trying to make it stay relevant. And what we also did is we tried to involve senior top management, our board, in this. As Daniel said, our CEO was basically the sponsor, so that helped as well. But bringing in other board members into these discussions made it also relevant to the entire organization as such, and that it kept it inside, let's say, strategic discussions, and so that was very helpful for us. And also it brought great input for us from outside, which we wouldn't have otherwise in such a manner. We created we created some sort of a safe space where we could discuss about these highly strategic topics, and that was phenomenal, I would say.
Great. And you were pointing to a factor of outside support or outside perspective, as you put it. Obviously, at the moment, or let's say, at least in the past years, the role of the company wasn't to create impact. It was a different role. I think we can have a lot of discussions about how that's changing, or whether that's changing, whether it should be changing. I think that goes a bit beyond this session here. But safe to say that many companies do not have the impact knowledge internally. I think, Alex, you've been building this for 10 years internally with your team, but you're also quite a leader in this space. And I think many other companies don't really have that expertise of how to work with social entrepreneurs internally. So we'd love to understand what the role of intermediaries is in the process, and especially since we're having people join from countries in Eastern Europe, Russia, how do you select intermediaries that can help you along the way? What's the process?
Yeah. So look, I think in general, it doesn't actually matter whether it's social entrepreneurship that you're focusing on or whether there's other topics. I believe that the real expertise when it comes to social change and social transformation And I talk a lot about social because that's sort of the focus that I have, right? My focus isn't so much on the environment, but it's obviously the same on that side too. Sits with nonprofit organizations and social enterprise that sit at the forefront of driving these changes that are disruptive, that are creating on a daily basis innovative ways of approaching these topics and solving them. And because of that firm belief that we have, there's no way that you can work in this sector without working with intermediaries, right? And because particularly in the social entrepreneurship space and also with regards to social procurement, as a company itself, it's very difficult for you to be able to identify, qualify, and verify social enterprises. So you need that middle person, middle organization that has the expertise, that has the know-how, that has the network, that has the relationship in a particular market with the social enterprises, to be able to say on the one hand to you, okay, these are the kinds of social enterprises that fit with your criteria. We all know that everybody also has very different definitions when it comes to social enterprises. So here are the ones that fit into your criteria. Here are the ones that fit with the categories of spend that you have, and basically make that connection, right? Be that matchmaker. Without them, it wouldn't work at all. And I think it's safe to say that goes through everything that we do in the social enterprise space. It goes beyond just social procurement. When it comes to capacity building as well, it's the same thing, right? How are we, who are we to determine what social enterprises need in terms of their current challenges? And it's usually the intermediaries that have that deep connection in a particular market or in various markets that are able to translate that, then the needs that social enterprises have, translate that in such a way that a company like SAP can actually do something with it and create value to the social enterprises back. So in my opinion, hugely necessary, and I wouldn't know how else we would be able to operate and to also scale the work that we're doing without intermediaries. In terms of what we're looking for, this is a really good question, and I've kept asking myself this in the last years. We don't really have sort of an open process of usually when we develop new initiatives and programs, we usually co-develop and co-innovate them with our partners. And that means that sometimes we don't even have a clear idea and plan. So we know maybe high level where we want to go and what we want to do, but it's only through the interaction and the constant iteration with our partner or partners that we figure out what the best way is to develop a truly win-win-win kind of program that creates value for all parties. So to me, the key thing is trust, is knowing that our counterpart sees the way that we see partnerships in the same way. You know, the word partnership is sometimes a bit overused, right? It's very easy to talk about partnerships, but building a really strategic, meaningful partnership takes a lot of time, takes a lot of effort, and requires give and take from all sides, right? That's a bit of a high-level answer. But the last point that I would like to make is that because we are not always very 100% clear of what we truly look for, what we really value is if a partner that is interested in working with us has done their homework when it comes to us, right? That has gone a little bit deeper to try and understand who we are as a company, what we stand for, what our values are, what we're trying to achieve in the social impact area, and what they in turn can do to support the goals that we have, right? So a standard pitch probably won't work, right? Because it doesn't give us enough in terms of realizing that this is a partner, or this is a potential organization that will go that lengthy journey with us of co-innovating and co-developing.
Yeah, absolutely would subscribe to that. I think the win-win situations and figuring out how to create value also for the corporate partner is something we also see as an organization. And that's also last year we've looked into our research on this topic called business as unusual, kind of understanding the benefits that can be on the side of the corporate partner as well, which are sometimes, you know, going much beyond actually the let's say the things you would expect from these kinds of engagements, which are more communication focused or, you know, engagement focused, but really also the innovation aspect and the access to markets, as you were mentioning. And maybe also getting to that, I think that taking that as a key nugget here for the audience to say, you know, understand your partner, understand your corporate partner, and try to create these cases and highlight the benefits of engaging in the space is highly relevant. Fabian, maybe if you can share some of the benefits that you as an organization actually reap from your work. You've already mentioned that, you know, it was able to inspire your thinking about relevance in the future, but I think it's also been quite an impact on individual people at MAN. So anything you can share on this one would be really interesting.
Yeah, and I just wanted to comment on what Alexandra said regarding the intermediaries. We wouldn't have done it without. It's just impossible if you want to go out there having a great idea, even if the idea is great. We wouldn't be able to do it because you have to have a certain network. You have to have a certain name in the area, and we were able to do this now with your help, and also building a brand for ourselves around this. And so that was basically, for me, that was it's impossible. So that would be another key nugget, I would say, for the audience. If you want to do it, look for a partner and take Alexandra's advice on how to search for one. That's and just a comment to the other question. To your question now, what we took away is basically we built an ecosystem around with startups, with other corporates, with NGOs, and we stay in touch, and we have quality discussions about developments in our area, even overarching. For us, it's always great to put the nose into the wind. I don't know if this is the same expression in English, but hopefully it also translates well into Russian. We used it for us. We used it in our in recruiting. It's a great way to tell people we're not only looking for, we're not only selfish, but we're also selfless. And it's a great tool or a platform to come into conversations with talents. And for us, and you mentioned it already, Daniel, it was the best tool ever to develop our top talents. So that was basically the idea behind it. So each year we did this, and we made quite an effort to look into who can we bring into this program and who can actually support the social businesses in the program with expertise and knowledge. And it was funny because all the people were very knowledgeable. Obviously, we made that sure, but they were very, very, let's say, they had lots of respect. Even some were, let's say, frightened in terms of, can I really add value? But that flipped from being frightened to being enthusiastic, because I actually can bring some value into the discussion or bring some knowledge into this discussion. And we brought, like, every year we brought like 20 MAN employees into the program, and it kind of became a group in itself, and it kind of spread internally like a virus, positive virus in this respect. And I got the best feedbacks in this project that I've gotten ever in like how motivated the people come out of this program and how they want to do this even further. They kind of connected, or they still are in touch with the startups. And so that's, I think, you know, in the end, all the companies were all just made up of people. And if you have the best people, and if you can attract the best people and keep the best people, you stay relevant, you stay attractive as a company, and you stay, for example, you stay attractive. And that's just, I think, the best thing, how you can actually add value.
Awesome. Thanks a lot. I would love to spend, since we're now getting into the last section here for our conversation, would like to spend one more question on really the challenges in working with social entrepreneurs. We all know that it's obviously two different cultures, right? I think you've already posted some resources, Alex, on social procurement. There's lots of lessons learned also on the Impact Accelerator on how to work best with social entrepreneurs. But also on the side of the corporations, obviously, there's a challenge with lack of empathy in the beginning. As Fabian just said, there's lots of question marks and, you know, can I add value? Should this be relevant, or is this relevant? So just would like to understand, what are the key challenges actually for social entrepreneurs to work together with corporates, and which ones do they have to solve basically to get ready for that collaboration? Alex, you can
Good
go
question.
first.
I think it comes back to expectations and commitment, right? I think you have to be really upfront right from the beginning what your expectations are in each other, and spend really time on that, understanding what both sides want from each other, right? Because it's so easy to get carried away in the beginning, go like, oh, this is a great idea, let's do this. But then the roadblocks that you typically hit is because either party has higher expectations or different expectations than maybe what you've actually discussed, right? And they're implicit. So really spend the time in understanding that, because I think you can overcome quite a lot by making sure you have voiced that right from the beginning. We try to do that as well by often using a design thinking approach when we start new partnerships, so that it's clear, so that it becomes a joint journey, but then it's also clear what our joint outcomes and goals are. So I think that the more work you put into it upfront, the better it is. The other thing that I think makes it challenging as well is when you don't talk about impact right from the beginning. And I think you mentioned it earlier, Daniel, how difficult that is. I think we're all sometimes still a bit scared of that because we all believe that social impact measurement is so incredibly hard and difficult to do, and nobody has that nugget really cracked. And but you basically have to start from at least what you think your North Star and your goals are, right? And then work it backwards. And in that, you need to understand together what your joint impact is going to be. And typically, my experience has been you hit those roadblocks when, or you have difficulties with each other when you haven't done that kind of work with each other, right? When you haven't invested that time. But that's sort of more on a high level. I think that also what can happen is commitment, right? That maybe on the company side, and I'll be very honest there, you might have the best intentions and you make a commitment and then you're not able to follow through. And that is the worst that can happen, right? So my approach to that has always been, I'm a pragmatist at heart. So I prefer to always start small, right? I'm a huge believer in experimenting and testing things out, but to be able to do that, you need to start small. And that sort of helps you to then make sure you don't overcommit. But when you really are ready to commit to something bigger, you can base it on facts and on results, and you have a showcase and you can build on that. But I've seen that happen quite a lot, right? That sort of on both sides, that maybe there's a commitment on the table and you just haven't thought it through, right? Completely, and thought and understood, okay, if I make this commitment, if I'm, for example, saying, yes, I'm going to help you with SAP resources, with SAP employees to overcome this particular strategic challenge, and they're going to spend 20 hours with you doing that. If you don't come through with those 20 hours and then with the volunteers then, and with them actually dedicating themselves to it, really immersing themselves in it, you have a very bad experience with each other, right? So the follow through, so really thinking through what can I truly commit to, and rather undercommit, but be able to stick to that and show the results, and then you can build on that, I think is important.
Yeah, that's a good point. We've also seen many examples of that, where obviously enthusiastic social entrepreneurs, and by the way, it's not just social entrepreneurs, it's also startups who are trying to work with corporates, overpromise on what they can deliver, and then it's actually more of a smokescreen MVP with nothing in the background, which is actually more harmful than to the relationship. I think that's the other thing where I just also want to just chime on the idea of intermediaries in the process. We're seeing this now in another project that we're actually also doing together on the COVID Alliance for Social Entrepreneur at the World Economic Forum, and a couple of research elements we're doing at the moment is really that, and it's not always bad intentions on the side of the social entrepreneur, is not understanding actually the journey that it would take to work with a corporate, especially when it comes to commercial partnerships or strategic partnerships. I think that journey is for many social entrepreneurs quite new, and the moderation needs to happen somewhere in the middle, and that is really something that intermediaries can do if they've worked with social entrepreneurs and corporate partners in the past. So I think I just also want to make that case, and that's also why it's great to have EVPA and other partners here on the call organizing this to actually support the space. Fabian, anything from you? And then I would love to close with a round of outlook for what the role of companies should be in the future in social entrepreneurship. And I see Eva coming online, and I'm aware of the time, so we'll be closing soon.
Yeah, I mean, you have to look at the situation we're in right now, and COVID hit some of the corporates quite hard. Others even profited, and I think you should have to differentiate between companies that are financially solid and are on a solid path throughout the crisis. And I think these companies, they can take over an important role in supporting the ecosystem, the social ecosystem, and even increasing their impact. I mean, they have now a great chance to kind of differentiate themselves. I mean, it's pretty obvious that these topics count more and more if you're looking into metrics like ESG, where everybody is rated around having solid governance, but also having social framework where you take care of not only yourself, but also of your stakeholders. And I think it's a great chance to differentiate yourself from your competition, and also become a very much perceived leader in the sphere. And if I'm looking at our successes and benefits that we took away, I can fully recommend to do that. It's a win-win-win for the company, for the social business, and the sector itself. So I think if you have the chance, do it, and it's highly appreciated, I guess.
Thanks. Great. Alex, anything to share on the future of the companies in the social entrepreneurship sector?
Look, I think, as I said, in my opinion, both sectors need each other, and there's so many great ways that you can get started, and particularly for the companies that are on this call and that are maybe a bit hesitant or don't know how and where to get started. You know, again, this goes back to my belief, at some point you just need to jump, you just need to start, because what you start with today is not where you're going to end up, right? You're going to learn so much in the process, and things will move and shape and change direction so much. But it doesn't matter, and it almost doesn't matter where you start, as long as you get started. And sort of jump over that first hurdle. And I think as Fabian was saying as well, the benefits, the immediate business benefits are so obvious. They're there, right? In the accelerator that Fabian was mentioning, it has a lot to do with leadership development, right? And the kind of corporate culture that you want to develop. And for us, next to that, it has a lot to do with, you know, with actually driving also our business. You know, when it comes to social procurement, we're not just doing this ourselves, but we're actually looking at our own SAP technology and how that can support our customers in achieving their responsible supply chain goals. So it becomes a commercial conversation then as well. And then there's so many other business benefits that you can gain from it. And as Fabian was saying as well, there's actually no way around it. In today's world, as a corporate, as a private sector company, you cannot not be engaged. The only thing that I would say is, if you do engage, when you do engage, do it wholeheartedly, right? And make sure you do it in, you know, don't just do it superficially, because that's not going to help anybody. Do it right, no matter how small it is, but then do it right.
Awesome. Thanks. That's a great way to end it. And thanks so much for joining today. Specifically also for pushing through, Fabian. We did cheer for your voice. Thanks so much for both of your leadership in this sector. It's super inspiring to see you guys at work. Really looking forward to the next 10 years, let's say, in this space. And yeah, again, thanks for joining, and thanks for your work. I'll be sharing a few also from our end. And with that, also thanks to Eva, and thanks to everyone here for making this space work in the future in CEE and Russia. Quite an exciting work ahead of you.
Thank you so much. There were questions also about your presence in the region, and I know that you are present in the region. I'm not sure whether the programs that you discussed are already present, but I hope they will be. So thank you so much. Actually, the session was really interesting, and we didn't want to end, you know, and I feel like we could keep on going. So really, thank you for your insights, and I feel like we would be happy to engage you in the future, because our project in the Eastern Partnership countries will be until 2025, and we definitely will continue. So I hope that through Daniel, we will be able to reach out to you, because we know that there is a lot of our local partners and companies also that I think can benefit from your learning. So thank you so much.